Lyra had always felt different. Among the Lorelians, her kind, every detail mattered. Her scales were slightly uneven, and her antennae were shorter than most. She often stared at her reflection in the small streams of the forest near her home, wishing she could look like the others. They moved gracefully, their colors vibrant and symmetrical. Lyra, however, always felt dull, plain, and unnoticed. She spent most of her days hidden. The colony was bustling with activity, but she stayed in the shadows, wandering the edges of the forest where no one could see her. She loved the quiet where the wind rustled the leaves and the water sang over the rocks. Here she could be herself without anyone judging her appearance. One morning, while Lyra was walking near a cluster of tall trees, she heard a strange sound. It was not the usual whisper of the wind or the chatter of other Lorelians. This was different, a careful, human-like voice calling out in curiosity. Lyra froze, her heart pounding. Humans were not common in this part of the forest. Only a few were stationed at the colony's research outposts, and they usually stayed far from the trees. Whoever this was had clearly wandered off the main paths. Cautiously, she stepped behind a large moss-covered rock and peeked out. A human, tall and wearing the standard exploration suit, was crouched near a patch of glowing plants. His movements were careful, as if he were studying every detail around him. Lyra felt a mix of curiosity and fear. Humans were different. Their skin, their expressions, the way they moved. It all fascinated her, but she had heard stories. Some humans didn't understand Lorelians and could react harshly. Then, unexpectedly, the human looked up and directly at her hiding place. For a moment, their eyes met. Lyra froze. She wasn't ready for contact. Her face, her posture, everything screamed insecurity. She wished she could disappear. Instead, the human smiled gently. "Hello," he said softly. "I didn't mean to scare you." Lyra's antennae twitched nervously. Was he really being kind? She didn't trust it at first. "Why are you here?" She whispered cautiously. "I'm Jackson," the human replied. "I'm just exploring the forest. Mapping the area." "You are?" Lyra hesitated. She had never introduced herself to a human before. Most didn't even notice her. Finally she said, "Lyra." Jackson nodded. "Lyra, that's a beautiful name." Her heart skipped a beat. Beautiful? No one had ever said that to her before. Not a single Lorelian had ever spoken to her with kindness about her appearance. Their society valued perfection, and Lyra had always fallen short. "Why are you hiding?" Jackson asked gently, noticing her tense posture. Lyra looked away. I don't fit in," she admitted. "I don't look like the others." Jackson's expression softened. "I think everyone has something unique. Maybe what you think is wrong, maybe it's special." Lyra blinked. She didn't know what to say. Humans often said strange things, but there was something in his eyes that made her feel safe, something that made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as ugly as she had always thought. Before she could reply, a rustling noise came from behind them. A group of young Lorelians had been playing nearby and had spotted her. Their laughter carried sharply through the forest, and Lyra felt her cheeks heat. She wanted to run, but Jackson stepped forward calmly. "Lyra, it's okay," he said. "Don't let them scare you." Lyra hesitated. Humans weren't supposed to interfere in Lorelian social matters, but this human didn't act like the others. He didn't try to dominate or judge. He simply stood beside her quietly, protecting her presence. The teasing Lorelians came closer. "Look at her," one said, pointing at Lyra's uneven scales. "She's so strange," another laughed. "Why does she even leave her home?" "She doesn't belong here." Lyra's stomach twisted with embarrassment. She wanted to vanish, but Jackson's calm voice made her hesitate. "They don't define you," he said softly. "You define yourself." Lyra's heart fluttered. Could it be that simple? Could someone really see her differently? She had never considered it. She had only ever seen the judgment in the eyes of others. The Lorelians laughed again and walked away, clearly bored. Lyra sank to the ground, feeling both relief and confusion. She didn't understand why this human made her feel seen. Jackson crouched beside her. "You're not alone, Lyra, not here, not in this forest. You are stronger than you think." Lyra looked at him surprised. Humans didn't usually say things like that. Most focused on their own work, their own concerns. But Jackson, he seemed to notice everything about her, even the things she tried to hide. For the next few hours, they walked together in the forest. Lyra showed him hidden paths, secret streams, and strange glowing plants. Jackson listened, asked questions, and never once made fun of her. He laughed when she pointed out a strange-looking insect, and he carefully took notes when she explained the plants. Lyra felt something she had never felt before: trust. The human did not judge her for being different. He did not make her feel small. He saw her, really saw her, and it was overwhelming. By the time the sun began to dip behind the mountains, Lyra realized she had spoken more than she ever had with another Lorelian. She had laughed, shared stories, and even smiled. Jackson had a way of making her forget the constant self-doubt that had shadowed her entire life. As they reached a small cliff overlooking the valley, Jackson paused. "Lyra, may I be honest with you?" Lyra nodded, her heart beating fast. "You are beautiful," he said simply. Her breath caught. She opened her mouth to respond, but could not find the words. Beautiful? That word felt foreign, almost impossible to accept. And yet, when she looked at him, she saw the truth in his eyes. He meant it. Lyra's mind raced. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever valued her for who she was, not what she looked like. She wanted to speak, to say something, but the words stuck in her throat. Jackson smiled, sensing her surprise. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. She turned away slightly embarrassed, but also deeply moved. It was the first time anyone had made her feel like she mattered. Not for perfection, not for conformity, but simply for being herself. As the evening sky turned shades of pink and orange, Lyra realized something important. Maybe she was not the strange, ugly Lorelian she had always believed herself to be. Maybe there was beauty in her uniqueness. And maybe, just maybe, humans could see what her own people could not. Jackson stood quietly beside her as they watched the sunset. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt hope. She felt the possibility of acceptance, friendship, and even something more, something she could not yet name. The forest around them seemed quieter, as if it respected the moment. Lyra took a deep breath, finally able to speak, though softly. "Thank you," she whispered. Jackson nodded, smiling. "You're welcome, anytime." That evening, Lyra returned home with a lightness she had never felt. Her steps were no longer hesitant, her antennae no longer drooped. She had seen something different in the human's eyes, a reflection of herself she had never known existed. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or if the other Lorelians would ever understand her differently. But for now, she allowed herself a small, shy smile. For the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, she could be seen as beautiful. And for Lyra, that was the beginning of a journey of self-discovery, friendship, and the possibility that the human who saw her true beauty might change not only her life but the lives of many others. The next morning, Lyra woke earlier than usual. The memory of Jackson's words from the evening before lingered in her mind. Beautiful. The word had sounded strange at first, almost unreal, but now it felt like a seed planted deep within her heart. She dressed quietly, careful not to wake her family, and slipped out to the forest. Jackson was already there, examining a patch of strange, blue-leaved plants. When he saw her, his face brightened. "Good morning, Lyra," he said. "Did you sleep well?" Lyra nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Yes, better than usual." She hesitated, unsure how to express the swirl of emotions she felt. Jackson's presence had become something comforting, something that made her feel safe in a way she had never experienced before. They began their walk together, exploring deeper parts of the forest. Lyra showed him secret streams and hidden groves, and Jackson listened carefully, asking questions and marveling at the unique beauty of her world. The more she talked, the more she realized she could speak freely with him, without the fear of judgment she always felt among other Lorelians. As they walked, Jackson reached out and carefully touched the edge of one of the glowing leaves. "Lyra, look at this," he said, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's like nothing I've ever seen." "You were right, it's incredible." Lyra smiled softly. "It only blooms in places few can reach. Most Lorelians never even notice it," Jackson nodded. "And that's what makes it special. Not everyone sees it, but those who do, they can appreciate it, just like you." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had never heard anyone compare her to something beautiful and rare. Her cheeks warmed, and for a moment she looked away, unsure how to respond. Their peaceful walk was interrupted by distant laughter. Lyra stiffened. It was the same group of young Lorelians who had teased her yesterday. She hoped they wouldn't find her today, but Jackson noticed her tension. "Are they bothering you again?" he asked gently. Lyra shook her head. "I don't think so, but I'm not sure." Before they could react further, the group appeared, their voices carrying through the trees. "Look who's here." The strange little Lyra showing off her secrets to a human. One of them shouted. Lyra's stomach twisted and she felt the familiar wave of embarrassment and fear. She wanted to vanish into the shadows, but Jackson stepped in front of her, calm and steady. "Lyra's not strange," he said firmly, his voice carrying through the forest. "She's amazing, and you should all see that." The Lorelians froze, surprised by the humans' confidence. They were used to sneering and laughter being met with submission, but Jackson didn't hesitate. He didn't mock them and he didn't belittle them. He simply spoke the truth as he saw it. Lyra felt a rush of gratitude. She had never imagined someone defending her like this. Not even her family had ever stood up for her against the teasing of peers. You can't talk to us like that," one of the older Lorelians finally stammered, trying to regain control. Jackson smiled kindly. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to say what's true. Lyra is strong. She is kind. And she is beautiful. Maybe you should try seeing it too." For a moment, there was silence. The Lorelians looked at each other, unsure how to respond. Their teasing had lost power, not because Jackson had shouted, but because he had spoken with sincerity. Lyra's chest swelled with a mix of pride and relief. The group finally muttered among themselves and walked away, leaving Lyra and Jackson alone once more. She exhaled slowly, feeling the tension leave her body. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," Jackson replied. "I just see what's right in front of me." They continued walking, and Lyra found herself opening up more than ever before. She shared stories of her childhood, her secret dreams, and even the small silly things that made her laugh. Jackson listened with genuine interest, asking questions and making gentle observations that made her smile. Hours passed quickly. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they reached a wide clearing. The view was breathtaking. The valley stretched out below, covered in vibrant colors as the last light of day touched the plants and trees. Jackson turned to Lyra. "Do you see this?" he asked. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Lyra nodded, her eyes wide. "Yes. It's amazing," he smiled softly. "You know, you're like this place. People might overlook it at first, but when someone really looks, they see how extraordinary it is." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes again. She wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. All she could do was look at him, her heart pounding, overwhelmed by the truth of his words. For a long while they just stood there, watching the colors shift across the valley. The quiet comfort of the moment made Lyra feel something she had never felt before: acceptance. Not from her society, not from her family, but from someone who truly saw her for who she was. As the sky darkened, Jackson finally spoke. "Lyra, you don't have to change for anyone. You are enough, exactly as you are. And anyone who can't see that, well, that's their problem, not yours." Lyra swallowed hard. She had lived her entire life feeling she was not enough. But here, with Jackson, she could finally imagine something different. Maybe she could be proud of herself. Maybe she could see her own beauty without fear or shame. The next few days passed quickly. Lyra and Jackson spent every free moment together, exploring the forest and learning from one another. He showed her how to look at the plants in new ways, while she taught him the secret paths and hidden wonders of the Lorelian world. With each shared laugh and conversation, Lyra felt more confident. She could see the truth in Jackson's eyes. He admired her for who she was, not who she thought she should be. One afternoon, as they rested beside a crystal-clear stream, Jackson leaned back on his hands and looked at her with a gentle expression. "Lyra, can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Of course. Do you believe in your own beauty?" he asked simply. Lyra blinked. The question made her heart pound. She had never thought about it before. Beauty had always been something others decided, but now she had to answer for herself. I think, maybe I do," she whispered. "Because you see it. And when you see it, I can see it too." Jackson smiled. "That's it. That's all it takes sometimes. Just someone to show you the truth." Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest. She had never felt so seen, so valued, and so free from the heavy weight of judgment. As the sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Lyra realized something profound. True beauty wasn't about perfect scales or symmetrical antennae. It wasn't about fitting in or meeting expectations. True beauty was about being seen, being understood, and being loved for exactly who you were. Jackson reached out and lightly touched her hand. "You're beautiful, Lyra, and I hope you'll always remember that." Lyra looked at him, unable to speak at first. Her heart was full, her mind racing with emotions she couldn't yet name. Finally, she found her voice. "Thank you, Jackson, for everything." He nodded, his expression calm and sincere. "You don't need to thank me. Just promise me one thing, never forget your own worth." Lyra smiled softly. She didn't need to promise. She already knew. The words he had spoken, the way he had seen her, had changed something deep inside. She felt stronger, braver, and more certain than ever before. In the days that followed, Lyra noticed changes in herself. She walked taller, smiled more often, and no longer hid from others. She still faced teasing occasionally, but it no longer mattered. She had learned something far more important. Beauty was not what others said it was what she knew it to be. And through it all, Jackson remained by her side, a constant reminder that seeing the truth in someone's heart could make a difference beyond imagination. Lyra realized that in this vast, complex universe, connections like theirs were rare and precious. The story of a human who saw the beauty in a Lorelian who thought she was ugly spread quietly through the colony. Others began to look at Lyra differently, not because she had changed, but because someone had shown her value, and in turn, that value became visible to everyone else. Lyra finally understood that the power of being seen, truly seen, was greater than any perfection society demanded. And as she stood on a hilltop with Jackson, watching the stars emerge one by one, she whispered to herself, a soft smile on her lips, "I am beautiful. I always was.